You want to start? Sure.
Okay, so hello everyone. Thank you for joining this month's Ask Me Anything webinar. My name is Anissa, or you can also call me Nana. I'm from the Talk Your Heart Out corporate team, or also shortened as TYHO, and I will be your facilitator for today's webinar. Joining me today is one of our TYHO therapists, Alva, who will be leading the discussion further on. For those who are new to TYHO, I'd like to make a quick introduction before we get started. So we are a counseling and therapy practice providing accessible, high quality mental health support. This includes online sessions, both through audio and video sessions, and they're available globally, and also in-person sessions in Singapore. Now, without further ado, let's move on to today's topic. Why does my best never feel enough? On perfectionism. Now, I believe some of you may be familiar with the term perfectionism itself. In fact, we chose this topic because this experience is more common than you think. Some of us face perfectionism at work, with a colleague, with a manager, and then some of us also struggle with it in relationships. Or even for a simple everyday task, you may notice what you may understand as a perfectionist trait. And while striving to do well can be quite healthy, perfectionism often keeps us in an endless cycle of pressure and self criticism. In today's session, we will be exploring what perfectionism really looks like, where it comes from, and how we can begin moving towards a more self compassionate and flexible perspective in life. Now, before we start and introduce our speaker for today, I'd like to share a few pointers about the AMA format. The session will begin with a 25-minute presentation by Alva, and then followed by a 35-minute Q&A session. To post your questions, you can send a message in the chat box at any time. Feel free to engage in the chat throughout the presentation, whether there are questions, your thoughts, or even the experience you are comfortable sharing today. And we will try to address as many as possible during the Q&A session. If you prefer to stay anonymous, feel free to change your nickname to an alias on Zoom or send your questions directly to my colleagues, Prat, Manasa, or you can also send it to me directly through the chat. Lastly, at the end of the session, we will be sharing a couple of QR codes for the feedback form and how you can connect with Alva on TYHO. In any case, you are perhaps keen to talk more about perfectionism or any other issues you are seeking support with. So do stay tuned until the very end. Now, allow me to introduce our speaker for today, Alva. Alva is a therapist at TYHO who works with individuals, couples, teens, and children. She is a registered psychologist and approved clinical supervisor with the Singapore Psychological Society. Alva has more than 14 years of experience and holds a master's in clinical psychology from James Cook University. She also holds a Bachelor of Social Sciences in Psychology from the National University of Singapore. Her strength lies in helping clients understand and gain perspective on complex issues and tackling them together in manageable chunks. We're really excited to have her with us today to talk more about perfectionism and how we can learn to move away from it. Uh, First of all, thank you so much, Alva, for being here today. And with that, I'll hand over the stage to you.
Thank you, Nana. Okay, just let me switch to me sharing the screen instead. All right. Give me a while. Okay, can I see that all of you can see my screen? All right. Okay, let's just jump into it. So for today, what we will cover, three main areas actually. For the first one, it's all about the what. What is perfectionism? What it's not? Are there different types of it? Next, the why, right? Okay, now I know what it is. Why does it happen to some of us and not the rest? Why does it sustain even if it causes suffering? Why do certain drivers seem to be uncontrollable, etc. And then finally, we'll look into the how, which I'm guessing quite a number of you are looking into, right? So now that I know what it is, why it's happening, how, right? It is not a fixed trait. So what are some practical things that we could try to move away from it and move into a more balanced and self-compassionate way of living? So as we go on with the slides, I'm going to ask all of you to notice not just what makes sense to you intellectually here, okay, but also what resonates with you emotionally. And the reason is this: perfectionism is more than just a thinking style or a identity trait. It really is a very emotionally compelling, deep, and learned pattern, right? So notice how you feel as we go through the slides. And as we jump in, I want to start with this, right? So I'm going to read a couple of half sentences. Just take note of what your brain pops up, what words are formed in your mind. And if you want, you can share it in the chat, or you could just keep it within yourself and just reflect. Okay, how would you complete this sentence? If I make a mistake, I need to be perfect so that other people, if others see me as imperfect, then what does that mean? When others are not perfect, I feel I need people to be perfect so that, all right, take some time to think about it. If your mind is drawing a complete blank, let's see if the following sentences resonate with you, right? Do these sound familiar? I'm going to read them one by one. I'm doing well, but it still never feels enough. Achievement lowers anxiety for a while, sure, but stress quickly comes back. I feel like I can never switch off 24/7. I got good feedback in my meeting just now, but I'm only thinking of what I could and should have done better. I feel like an imposter. Maybe I should just not do anything. I shouldn't start anything at all. I better double, triple, quadruple check again. I've already sent that email. I probably won't recall it, but let's just check it one more time, right? To make sure I get it right. Do any of these sentences sound familiar to you? Take a moment, think about it. And maybe at this point you're thinking, "Oh, maybe it's not perfectionism, maybe it's just high standards. Isn't that a good thing?" And even if it's perfectionism, isn't it a good thing, right? And I thought as we're reflecting, maybe I can ask the team directly, maybe Nana, right? I'm just going to check in with you, all right? As I was going through those sentences, do any of these sound familiar to you?
I can't say I'm not familiar with these sentences, you know. I mean, my family background, they're just very academic centric. So a few of the sentences I quite heard often.
Okay. And if I were to ask you to maybe, if you don't mind sharing, some of these sentence completers, right? How would you complete one of these sentences?
Oh yeah. When I saw the sentence, I was like, oh, the first one I repeat quite often, almost every day. I think if I make a mistake, I feel like a complete failure.
Mm,
Something like that. Because when I make a mistake, it's like, oh, I'm a disappointment, or I don't know actually where it's rooted, you know, like I don't know
mm.
if I have high expectation of myself, or is it because people around me have high expectation for myself, or I don't know, maybe I just have a high standard, you know. I cannot quite really tell why do I I like why do I have such thoughts.
Thank you, Nana, for sharing. And this is very common when we try and complete these sentences. You don't get the sense of that immediate why, right? It just pops up in your head as though it is the truth, the one and only. You don't even question it until I ask you to think about it, and you're like, hey, where did that come from, right? I hope as we go through this process, if some of you have similar thoughts and beliefs and feelings as Nana, you might get your answer as to where and why it's happening. We're just gonna move on. Okay, so back to, hey, is it just high standards like Nana said? Let's see if I can help some of you make sense of it. All right, so what we're gonna do is to see what's the difference between what we call healthy striving, high standards, versus a more unhealthy form of perfectionism, right? There's a lot of words, but just remember this. For high standards, it's a lot of flexibility. It feels like there's more control over it. For unhealthy perfectionism, it's going to feel super compelled, very rigid. It's hard to change. It's like, I can't help it. Okay. And what could some of these rigid, unrealistic rules sound like? It could be something like, I want everyone to like me, right? I want all of them to see me as a good person, perhaps. Now, what would be a more achievable goal or flexible so-called inner belief? That could sound more like, okay, I don't think everyone in the world will like me, but perhaps I want my close friends and family to have a close relationship. We can get over occasional conflicts. At work, I know some of these guys are not the most friendly people, maybe, but I just want us to have a functional working relationship to get tasks done. So that would be a more flexible sounding goal. And that brings me to the second point. If you are a moral believing in unhealthy perfectionism, mistakes comes at high cost, high stakes. Remember the sentence completion? If I make a mistake, it's going to feel unacceptable. It's going to feel like I failed. I might be rejected. I should be ashamed. Very uncomfortable emotions. Whereas for someone who's more on the healthy, high standard side, mistakes is something you can laugh at. It is something that it's exciting even. It's hard to imagine, right? Because mistakes signify, hey, it's something I can learn from. It's part of that process of improving. And if you believe, that's what mistakes are, it brings me to the third point. Healthily, you will think that rest is necessary. You could take a break at any time. Unhealthily, on the right, if mistakes are so high stakes, rest is going to feel really uncomfortable. Have you heard of people, or maybe you are one of them, when you take a break, you just feel so uncomfortable, you might fall ill. After working for months, you take a break and even your body breaks down, right? So that could be an indicator where rest is really difficult for your brain and your body to make sense of. And to the fourth point, because of this, if high stakes mistakes and rest is so difficult, the whole process will feel really draining. You might feel a bit good when things go well, but it's temporary. Whereas for a healthy high standards, you would feel proud, you would feel satisfied when things go well. And that process can be even energizing. You see how different that is? And if I were to sum it up all together, right? If you're a more healthy high standard side, your self-worth should feel more stable across time. For unhealthy perfectionism, it is as though your self-worth fluctuates according to how you perform, according to what you achieve, according to how you think people view you. All right, moving on. Okay, so now we know, right? So there's maybe some kind of unhealthy perfectionism. Are there different types? And yes, there are. In fact, it's common for people to experience a mix of types. I'm going to share three of them very briefly. The first one is what we call socially prescribed. This just means that you think, or rather, you feel the pressure coming externally, like people, society, my family, my workplace. They expect me to be perfect. You probably will be a bit more sensitive to rejections, to rejecting people, to disappointing people, to criticisms from others. The second type is what we call self-oriented. So the pressure is imposed on yourself, right? I must be perfect. If not, I don't feel enough, or I feel like a complete failure. That's the second type. And that's the most common one, actually. The third is what I call other oriented. And I have worked with a lot of couples and people who come to me and talk about how "Ah, my spouse, they just can't meet my standards, right? So I ask my husband or wife to clean up the house, and that's not even considered cleaning, right? I have to go and clean all over again. And then when I clean all over again, What does my spouse do? He or she is happily sitting on the sofa resting. And you just get really frustrated, right? So you would feel like others cannot meet your standards. And it's very, very not just frustrating, but it might bring up a lot of disappointment, anger, and strain in relationships. So these are the types of perfectionism. I'll move on to the why. Okay, and we are not going to go into like super details of why, but it helps to know why some of these uh, factors are linked to perfectionism. Okay, can I just check that I've got the right slides? Just hold on, okay? Yeah, I'll go on anyway. So for the first point, growing up in environments, these are certain points that are tied to perfectionism, what we call conditional approval, right? Is when growing up, it's as though people around you only show you attention, praise, or love when you do well, when you perform well in something. And when you don't, it's linked to a lot of criticism. It's linked to a lot of comparison, a lot of stakes on, hey, you need to be successful. And I can share an example for myself. I don't know if some of you can relate to this, but growing up, my mom was someone with a lot of expectations, right? So I was only, this is only one time, it happened a few times. So I was only 8 years old, primary two. So I had a math test and I had 99.5 out of 100, which most people will think, oh wow, that's really good, right? You want to guess what my mom says? What would you say if your child or someone around you get 99.5? Well, my mom just went on to say, huh, what happened to the 0.5? Why so careless? And then, flip the paper, right? Look at this. And I still remember to this day, I missed out a dollar sign. I don't know why the dollar sign cost me 0.5. And what's the next question? How did the rest, your friends, did they also get better? Was it worse? Right? So there's a lot of that comparison, right? And there's a lot of expectation that I didn't know of as an 8-year-old. That, oh, you mean I'm supposed to compare to my friends? As an 8-year-old, I didn't even bother asking or checking what my friends got, right? I was just like, oh, I got this score. And think about this, this is just one time. But if you have experienced multiple times of such, criticism or the emphasis on comparison, it can form a very entrenched belief and internal rule you have, right? So that's the second and third point. For others, a common root cause could be if you grow up in an environment where it's highly unpredictable, where there's a lot of anxiety around you being modeled by caregivers or significant people in your life. Some of us might feel like, hey, I have to develop and make sure that there is stability, that I have to strive harder. And that can lead to perfectionism as well. The next 2 points, it's really about how maybe certain significant events that happen in your life that you don't want to experience such shame or failure again. Or perhaps it's really uncontrollable, right? For some of us with family history of mood disorders, of anxiety, we might be more prone to others in terms of having high standards and then moving on to perfectionism. Right, next slide. Okay, so this is just first, I've talked about childhood and what has really affected in the growing up environment. A lot of times there is an ongoing environment, even as an adult, right? And I don't even have to explain much. I think most of you would get what I'm saying, right? Things like social media, things like implicit societal values. And maybe I use Singapore as an example, right? Where without being said every day, I think we can agree that certain things like meritocracy, efficiency, very fast paced, getting things done well, these are all implicitly expected, right? And all this does is it rewards comparisons, success, efficiency, things that make those perfectionistic rules more entrenched. Now, in educational settings growing up, especially in a lot of Asian countries, Nowadays, even starting in preschool, right? There's already a lot of high pressure, making sure that they're learning things way beyond what they're supposed to. And then you think, okay, after studying, I finally graduated. Yay, I'm free from pressure. Welcome to the adult life where things are even worse, right? You've got your boss, you've got KPIs, you've got a lot of deadlines, a lot of high pressure to do things well and better. Now, I just want to emphasize, I am not blaming our families. I am not blaming our culture or our countries, right? What I'm saying is that these environments might unintentionally reinforce some of these perfectionistic rules we have. Maybe back then it helped us survive and you adapt really well, right? You became who you are today. But when it becomes too rigid, that's when it becomes a problem. Okay? So when it becomes too rigid, one of the fears that develop is just being fundamentally defective. You might feel like if I make a mistake, I'm going to be exposed for the imposter I am. I will be seen as not enough. They will not respect or accept or have lunch with me after this, right? It makes sense then you want to compensate or you want to avoid exposing yourself so called. Next, not just about being inadequate, right? We could also develop very rigid rules that's unrelenting, not just high, but unrelenting. These are just examples, right? I'm just going to read some of them. Things like good is not enough. If I rest, it means I am lazy. I should always be doing something. Do these sound familiar to you? If they do, please take note of it, all right? Because we are going to use that later on when we talk about strategies. All right. So moving on to in terms of the cycle, if I put it all together very quickly. Most of the time it starts as this. You've got a deadline, you've got something you got to do, an internal demand comes up, you think, oh, I must do this perfectly. It activates a lot of uncomfortable emotions that you can't control. Threat, shame, fear, because of how you're brought up. You overdo things, overwork, overcheck, or the opposite, don't do anything at all. What happens? It helps you feel better, but only for a while. And very quickly, the negative emotions come back. And because of this, sometimes you go, okay, I've got to then increase my standards further to make sure this doesn't repeat. It becomes a cycle. Or perhaps you procrastinate, you feel a bit better, then you feel guilty for procrastinating. And you go like, no, this cannot work. I have to make sure I do better. Again, standards increase. Over time, months, years, decades, you can see how rooted this is. Okay, if I really summarize, right? Perfectionism is something that's trying to help. It is trying to increase approval, safety, control. It is trying to protect us against fear, rejections, feelings of not enough, all the negative things. But it comes with cost. I don't think I even have to go through this slide, right? If you're here and you're struggling with perfectionism, you might already start noticing that it can affect so many areas: mental, emotional, physical health. It might affect your prospects. Why? Perfectionism makes us afraid of taking risks. We stay in a comfort zone. We might miss certain opportunities because if we try, we might make a mistake and then we stop ourselves. So our growth is stifled. We are less creative. The third point, it can affect relationships. It's harder to show up for others when you're so focused on trying to be perfect. It can also stress other people out, right? People might feel like, hey, I can't meet your standards. Or they might feel like, oh, I don't know how to help you when you're stuck, being so stressed about perfectionism. And add it all together, you can see how this is something that's not worth it, right? It comes with so much cost. So, what is it really then? Why does it happen? If you don't remember anything, this is like the summary of what I've just said, okay? Perfectionism is not high standards. It really is a super costly strategy. It's trying to secure self worth, safety, control, or approval through achievement and performance. The good news is we can try to achieve similar outcomes in healthier ways. doesn't have to be through this only costly strategy. Okay, then you're like, okay, please tell me already, right? What are the things to do, right? I'm here just to know how to change. Okay, first, I want everyone to just take a pause and breathe. Because perfectionism is not something where I try one or two strategies and then magically, wow, I'm changed. If it's so easy, you won't be here looking at this, ask me anything, right? Okay, so take note, what we're trying to do over time is to increase flexibility over rigidity, self compassion over self criticism, progress over perfection. A very nice words. What does it really mean? Just remember this, okay? We are not lowering your standards. For some people, it can be very scary to think about. We are not lowering your standards. We are reducing or even removing the fear as the driver of what you're doing. So I'm going to share four tools. The first two, actually, we've already covered and talked about it briefly. The first one, remember I asked you to write down or take note of some of these sentences that you've completed or some of these rules that sound familiar to you, right? First step is always to identify, externalize it. Why? If it's something fearful, the moment we can name it and talk about it, you are already removing the fear a little bit. So if you can intentionally pause, ask yourself, hey, what rule is am I following right now? As you're checking, the email that you sent for the fourth time, you're thinking, hey, what is this rule? Is it that if I send a wrong thing and make a mistake, it means I'm not enough? Okay, so notice your motivation because each time you feel like, oh, I just have to do this, I got to check one more time, I've got to be perfect. Ask yourself, hey, what at what cost is it for? Okay. Third one. Now this is going to sound really, really scary for a lot of people, but hear me out, okay? You know how I said perfectionism is not just a thinking style? It is a feelings like very emotionally compelled thing. So it's not just about cognitive insight. You can't just go, okay, I'm aware of things. We have to let our body and mind experience something different. So that means starting with small experiments. Can we try sending text with typos? And the team can attest to it because when I did this slide for them, I had some typos in my slides as well, right? I had a big one. Did they then say, okay, Alva, I think we'll change our speaker, right? We will find another person for this AMA. Hopefully that's not what they were thinking, right? So things like that. Could we do little imperfection just to notice, is there a difference between our anticipated predicted fears versus the actual outcome? And let your body, right, even for a few seconds, experience something different. Like, hey, I made a small mistake, nothing bad happened. Or I made a small mistake, no one even noticed it. For some of us who likes or finds yourself checking, right? See if you can resist checking for more than a few times that you set, maybe maximum two times. For those who would spend so much time doing something, think about what's good enough. Can I submit just 80% of my usual standards? Do I set a time? I'm just going to do this for 2 hours, and if it's done, it's done. Done is better than perfect. Right? Think about this as I move on to the fourth two. This is important because, in a way, we can't totally remove that inner rule that you've developed for decades. But what we can do is to develop an alternate voice and make it stronger. What do these internal alternate voices sound like? These are some examples. Saying things like mistakes are part of learning. I care about doing well, but I can also tolerate being human while doing it. I can celebrate small wins. If you want to challenge yourself, you can go, I can celebrate mistakes. This might sound really like, what are you talking about? But this is what I do with my child actually. We celebrate mistakes, right? So if we are building something, a towel, and it falls, halfway through before we're completed, I will go, yay, right? It becomes fun. It'd be like, hey, let's try again. So this is what I mean. Celebrate mistakes even. Okay, I'm gonna pause here because these are just examples. What would be more effective and powerful would be if you come up with it yourself, right? At the beginning of this webinar, I've asked you to take note of that inner voice, right? Right now, do the same, but the opposite. Take note of what's the alternate, healthier inner voice that you want to try out. And if you can, take your phone, pen and paper, somewhere, write it down. Especially if you have already noted the negative inner rule, write it right after it, side by side, right? Just take a few seconds to do that now. Why do you want to write it down? The more you say, write, think, engage with it in different ways, the more we are strengthening it. And then the more you do the third tool, which is trying it out, you are proving that new rule is correct. So you're going to alternate between 3 and 4, right? And then the more you do that, the more you'll realize, hey, my self-worth does not have to be very tied to performance. I can then start looking at, oh, then what is it tied to? Now that's a whole new different topic, right? To explore. How else would you find your life values and your self-worth that's not conditionally tied to performance? All right. If you need some more time to stay on this page, to look at the sentences or to even come up with your own alternate voices, let me know. And if you have ones that you want to share with others, feel free to post it in the chat and share your wisdom with everybody. Okay. Thank you for Manessa for posting it in the chat. All right. My last slide. Of course, it is also possible that sometimes you've tried what we've talked about and you go, hey, it's still the same, right? It's hard to work on this alone. Then you might want to consider therapy, getting a professional to work with you to customize the journey, or to work into deeper patterns to sustain self. Or if you find like it's really very rigid, right? It's leading to very bad burnouts, or even just the idea of rest feels very unsafe, I would strongly recommend you to consider therapy, right? To seek a professional to guide you through this process. Okay, I think this is my last slide. Um, shall I pass it back to Nana to bring us to the last few slides? Nana, do you want to overtake my slides, or should I share for you?
I can share. Sorry. Yeah, I can share. Sorry.
All right, I will stop sharing.
Okay.
Over to
Okay.
you.
Let me. Okay. Now, just a small. Thank you so much for the presentation earlier. I think quite a lot of people have been engaging throughout the chat as well, as you see. There are people who agree with what you've shared, and it was very insightful, I think, knowing the type of perfectionism that one could have. Uh, okay, so now it's time for the Q&A segment. Before we go there, uh, just wanted to highlight that let's respect each other throughout the questions, keep an open mind, and also stay on point. I'll be reading. If you have any questions, you can put it on the chat. Uh, I'll read them out, Alva, or do you want to? Okay, I'll read them out then.
Thank you,
Uh,
Nana.
if you'd like to stay anonymous, please feel free to send your questions to Prat, Manasa, or also you can send it through me. So with that, let's get started.
Oh, I see one. It's okay, Nana. I'll read it out. Okay, I see one
Okay.
from Josephine. How do I draw boundaries with my boss that is perfectionist? Okay, this is one of the harder questions, right? Because you're asking me, somebody else is the perfectionist, not me. How do I work with that? Okay. I think first we have to accept, right, that there are certain things that are out of our control, right? It's not going to be easy to change somebody who is not aware or ready or for whatever reason not going to change. But having said that, it's about, okay, I can't change that person. I can't share these slides with my boss. How do I then manage that? How do I draw boundaries? Um, Drawing boundaries, because you see, if your boss is someone who's truly that unhealthy perfectionist type, you would know that the way he or she does things or expects things will be very rigid, right? So flexibility is going to be tough. So you probably don't want to keep changing the way you um, expect things, right? You want to make sure that if you have certain boundaries, keep it more fixed, right? Assert it, let the person know what what you want. Try and use more I statements, right? So I feel like this is not working out because blah blah blah. Instead of a you, right? You are being too perfectionist. Your standards are too much. Why? If you use more you statements, someone who is a perfectionist might feel really triggered, especially if we're just guessing here, if that person has a lot of childhood baggage, right, that has formed those perfectionistic beliefs, they can feel really personal. So try and keep it neutral, I statements, draw your boundaries, and you might have to think about, hey, if I've tried this and it's still not working, you have to think, is this really a job for me? Do I want to rethink, would a different environment suit me better? Or do I want to get professional support to manage the emotions that come out of it? Hope that answers your question, Josephine. Hey, Nana, should I just follow the order that's coming down from the chat?
Yeah, yeah. But, I'll just help summarizing. I think the one comes from Nisrina.
Thank you.
Okay. So yeah, I think Miss Rina has tried I think you shared a few of small behavioral experiments. I can switch back to the slide.
The number third, yeah, previous one.
Oh yeah, okay. So Miss Rina has tried this.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Miss Rina did the small mistakes, uh, they tried to compensate themselves for the mistake. And then after that, they ended up thinking that they overcompensate over such small mistakes.
Ah,
And
okay.
and then they ended up
Mm,
being a cycle where they ended up or still ended up regretting. I think it's the celebrate the mistake that you shared as well. So is there any way to not get yourself into this state?
okay. So maybe you've already tried doing the mistake, but you end up compensating for it and going back to that same cycle, right? That's very common, right? You would feel like it's just very difficult to stay with that mistake. You want to do something to do that. And then we do something what we call like a meta emotion. You feel upset about being upset, or you feel worse and you regret over your regret, etc. Okay. How do you not get yourself in this state? Actually, it's the same thing. Remember the very first two. Now you can go back 2 slides back. It's identify what is this specific rule that you have. What is the rule related to wanting to compensate for the mistake? So maybe the rule is something more of, if I don't compensate, it means if I don't compensate, or what would happen? Try and see if you can identify that rule. Because each time that comes up, that urge to compensate for the mistake comes up, you can then pause and identify, hey, this is the rule. I don't always have to follow it. And then, even if you do end up following it, right? You'd be like, oh no, why did I do it? I regret. Okay, this is when you go, my plan. I'm gonna buffer. I'm gonna buffer and plan for times where I still compensate that. That's part of the plan anyway. I know that I'm not going to suddenly get better at managing perfectionism. So even our plan is not perfect, right? Allow room for times where you are going to still be in a cycle, but try and see, hey, little by little, 1% at a time. Can I try identifying it and staying with this feeling? Does that make sense? There's no like quick, immediate way to not get into this state. You can only do small steps at a time, be more aware, and then be compassionate to yourself if you end up going into the cycle sometimes anyway, right? And maybe another one could be really picking a even smaller mistake, right? The smallest you can ever think of. You submit a PowerPoint and your alignment is like one more spacing. You're something very, very small like that, just for a start. You could send a typo to a friend. Maybe it's lower stakes because your practice, probably you want something that is more manageable, and then you start from there. All right.
Okay, thank you. And then the next question is quite interesting,
Hmm.
actually. Is the saying aim for the stars unhealthy, according to you? Have you heard of aim for the stars?
I haven't, but I think I know what it means. It just means
Yeah,
you want to like aim high, right?
yeah, aim high.
I think it's missing a second part because aim for the stars in itself, it's okay. But if you're aiming for the stars at the cost of falling down, or at like cost of your own emotional, mental health, physical well-being, I think that's unhealthy. So again, it's the drive, it's okay. It's okay to have the drive, it's okay to have standards, but if it's rigid, if it's costing too much, then that's unhealthy.
Okay. The next question is, how can I take it easy on my partner and not project my high standards on them? Because it seems like from the question, it is affecting their relationship.
Yes, definitely. You're gonna feel like, why, right? Oh, why can't my partner just um, work with me here? Or you might feel bad, like, oh, why did I project my high standards on them? Um, I think it's to first realize that your intention is to protect the relationship, right? I'm guessing that you really want this relationship to work. Start from there, okay? Notice that you have positive intention for it, right? And then realize that because of this high standards, it becomes very exhausting for each other. What is your internal rule then? If I get it wrong, if my partner gets it wrong, what does it mean? And then challenge yourself to think, hey, could it be possible that if sometimes my partner don't meet my standards or I don't meet my standards, it is actually showing vulnerability in the relationship. It is about being authentic in the relationship. Because healthy relationships will not demand perfection, right? The relationship gets stronger when both of you can be real, when you make mistakes and you repair. Okay, so I know I'm not answering your question. I think we should switch it to sometimes when those mistakes happen or when your partner don't meet your high standards, can you repair when things go wrong? Can you have that conversation with your partner and go, hey, sorry, just now I had this internal rule. I was back into that state again. And I'm gonna keep trying. And how can we support each other through this process and not get everything right? Just that, hey, we are both humans. And if the relationship is good enough, know that it can handle that. Hope that answers that question. If you really think, okay, I just want to stop and not project, then I think it's more about in that moment, how do I pause, take a deep breath, look at what I've written, my old rule versus my new rule, walk away first if needed, and then come back to that conversation. That will be a more in the moment repair, but that's a bit harder. So I would encourage you to really start from um, first identifying the rules and what I just said. Okay.
Okay. Now, next one. Uh, they are asking about their work, it seems.
Mm,
According to the questions, the work that they are working actually reinforce the standards of this perfectionism
mm,
because it is a workplace that cannot tolerate mistakes because it causes delay, or like it is important work that consists numbers.
mm, mm.
So then what do they do if they are like in that kind of environment?
Okay, so it's totally true that some environments are high stakes, right? I can't change that. But even in those settings, let me just share that if you look into performance research, it tells us that flexibility and a more emotionally regulated environment will improve outcomes better than a perfectionistic expectation. Right? Because perfectionism makes everyone more stressed, it increases errors. Over time, things just you don't perform as well. Having said that, you're like, okay, I know this, but my boss is there really saying, hey, if you make a mistake, the whole department's gonna go off. Or if you're a surgeon, a mistake can really cause big problem, right? I would encourage you to look at are there parts of the work that don't demand perfectionism? It cannot be that 100% you need to be on the ball all the time. There should be some parts that allow for some leeway. If you do, during those times, more intentionally allow yourself to rest, experiment with small mistakes, so that you're building up your tank for those moments where it's truly high stakes and you really don't want to make mistakes, so that that's balanced. But if you find that really this job, there's nothing I could do 100%, it's just like nothing, always high standards, again, you have to relook, is this job suitable for you in this season of your life? That would be a harder question, but it really demands us to relook into our situation. All right?
Okay, the next question, just to summarize it,
Mhm.
uh, so they agree with the content that you have shared, but then whenever they experience something related to perfectionism,
Hmm.
they didn't even realize that this perfectionism traits is actually harming for them until they told others about it. So then when they were just with them with their thoughts, they're just, oh, this is high standard, this is high standard, and then they talk to someone else, and then they finally realize it's a bad thing. So
Hmm.
then what is the line when perfectionist actually becomes concerning?
Okay. In psychology, we have something called functioning. What this just means is, does it affect different parts of your life? Does it affect your work that you can't perform or get by work? Does it affect your daily functioning? Can you get things done? Do you get so stressed about it you're just frozen there? And number three, especially in this case, does it affect your social functioning? Does it affect your friendships? So maybe it could be a case where you thought you're managing quite okay, but it's stressing the people around you, right? And is it stressing it to the extent where you feel like this friendship is getting very strained, where your friends might maybe not want to hang out with you as much or get really affected by you? This would be something to notice, observe, and consider. So yeah, I always go back to whether it affects your day-to-day social and work function. And of course, your emotions as well, right? Notice, do you fall sick a lot more often when you have a lot of perfectionistic standards? Are you getting very irritable or are you getting very anxious more often? So these are just indicators to think about.
Now, is there any early signs or red flags of perfectionism at workplace or relationship at the very early stages?
Okay. It's hard to answer this because there isn't a so-called early stages. For many people, this is something that have built up and accumulated since childhood. So it's not like as an adult, suddenly, it's very rare that suddenly you would develop perfectionism and it's not like flu, it just suddenly comes up. But maybe it's looking at what's the red flags of it affecting your work. So maybe all along you have this coping style of perfectionism, but what's the red flag of maybe burnout? So it would be thinking, hey, just like what I've said just now, how is it affecting your day-to-day functioning? How much time are you spending checking, thinking about this before you sleep, rehashing all the things that you should have done, etc. How much is it affecting you? You think about the duration, intensity, you would think about your Uh, conflicts, is it getting more and more frequent because of this? So these there are some things you can spot, but most of the time it is a very slow process.
Okay. Now, next question. This person has tried to uh maybe adjust their minds, embrace. They say the word embrace their mindset
Hmm.
to live by the words "done is better than perfect." But then they still struggle with procrastination. So they
Hmm.
ended up thinking and refining, continue doing that, and then what they ended up doing is that it stays in a draft form. So, while still embracing the same mindset, do you think it would help to focus on taking action and getting things out, even if they don't feel ready? Or like they have to create something perfect or up to their standards so then the world kind of like will come what they do, what they make.
Your short answer is yes. Yes, I agree. I think you should focus on taking action and getting it out into the world. Maybe think about what would be suitable platforms. So be strategic about where you want to try things out. Maybe you want to soft launch with your friends first, people safer circles, just to get something going. Because the thing about procrastination is if you can overcome that initial first, sometimes it's just seconds or minutes, you realize that after that it's a lot easier. Because your brain perceives that first few seconds as actual pain. You do a brain scan, the same areas will light up. It's pain. But once you get over it, it's easier. So yes, just focus on getting it out. Don't think about the outcome, just process, right? I'm just gonna type whatever. I'm not even gonna backspace and edit. I'm just gonna keep typing and press enter and just try it out. So good luck with that.
Okay, Alba, I just wanted to check if you are okay to take on a few more questions.
Definitely yes.
Okay. The next question is, how can we help a perfectionist feel less suspicious that they
Hmm.
are still not good enough, even if their work has been validated? I
Less
think it's like,
suspicious. Let me see, what do you mean? Oh, okay. I see. Okay. It's like maybe you tell yourself, okay, it's good enough. People have told me it's good enough, but part of you still feel, really? You still have some doubts, right? Okay. I think those doubts would always be there, but again, identify and externalize it. So in this case, we are identifying the suspicion. You want to give it a label, right? What is this suspicion that you often feel after some kind of validation, right? You call, give it a name. You'd be like, oh, maybe that's the paranoid side of me. So every time it happens, again, you're saying, oh, there it goes again. There's that part yapping on and on about, I don't believe it. When we name it and externalize it, already you have less, or rather, it has less control over you. And you have more power to say that, okay, I can't get rid of you. I know you're saying that, but I don't have to automatically listen to you. Because we don't listen to every single thing that people say, right? Same. Why do you have to listen to every single voice in your head? Especially if the voice is the kind of voice that if your HR hears it, you will be fired. Right? Some of these things you tell yourself quite inappropriate and harsh. HR will not allow it. So why are you allowing yourself to always listen? Hope that answers.
now the next one is, uh, let me see. I try to be flexible
Mhm.
by trying to say myself like, so what? So what if my partner is not washing the dishes or like cleaning the way I want them to be,
Mhm.
according to the example you shared?
Mm.
But then they're quite worried if they stop taking things seriously to the point that they are like ended up being inconsiderate of others' feelings, you know?
Mm.
So what if me being late is actually a big deal to other people? But then I think it's fine to be late for 5 minutes. So where's the line between being considerate or giving yourself some flexibility?
Ah, okay. Firstly, if you're a true perfectionist, it is extremely unlikely that you will flip to the other end and be the most inconsiderate, late, messy person. It is quite unlikely. It can happen, but very, very unlikely. So take comfort in the knowledge, right? Your anchor and your foundation is such that you care about it. letting go a bit is unlikely to lead to a slippery slope. At the same time, it is advisable that you communicate with your partner. If you're going to try something new, let your friends, let your partner know, hey, I'm trying this thing out. So they will understand that, oh, for this specific times, you're going to try to maybe lower your standards a bit, close one eye a bit, be late by 3 minutes, so that their response would also be compassionate and you can have a corrective, positive experience. Okay, so let people know what you're doing. Be reassured that you probably won't flip to the other side so much. And even if you do, the part that is so internalized will automatically jump up and stop you. I can be very sure of that. If you find that it's really too hard, again, I would suggest working with a professional. If you find that it's so entrenched or it flips to the other extreme, then I will be thinking, hey, there's something more deeply rooted. Probably you will need a professional to figure out together with. Mm.
Are you okay to do one last question?
Of course.
Okay, so one last question. Uh, how to reduce nervousness about being perfect in high stakes environment?
Okay.
So they feel disappointed when it is high stakes situation, and then they
Mm.
also get nervous about performance review. From the questions like maybe the performance is not good, but they cannot try to regulate themselves to calm and then not to be perfectionist because it is a high stakes situation.
Okay.
Hello,
This would be about
hello, hi.
how. Oh,
Hello,
yes.
can you hear me? I just want to clarify that question because I asked it. So basically, it's like when it's a high stakes situation, I will feel like I need to be perfect. Then that gets me super nervous, right? But
Mm.
it's a bad thing because when I think that I need to be perfect, then I will make more mistakes and things like that, right? But then it's quite difficult to okay, no, at this time I cannot think that I need to be perfect. But in order to meet these high stakes requirements, I have to be perfect. So that's like the cycle loop that I wanted to ask about.
Mm. This is very common. And I think this high stick doesn't happen very frequently. I just want to check, is it like every few months one time, or is it like every day it's high stakes? Because sometimes that makes a difference. If you don't mind
Not
sharing.
not like every single day. So let's just say example, a concrete example, there's a presentation that I need to do, right? And
Mm.
there's a lot of important people in there. So before that, I'm like, okay, I need everything to be perfect. But then I also tell myself like I cannot think like that. If I think like that, then something's gonna go wrong because then I'm too stressed out. So then I don't
Uh,
really know how to deal with that.
okay, okay. It's good that it's not an everyday thing. So there's that time in between where you can prepare for this, right? So it goes back to my what I shared in the practical tools. During that time, not right before high stakes, normal time, okay, already identify what's your rule. Your rule sounds a bit like I need to be perfect. If not, what is it? People will view me negatively, or I'm gonna screw up the presentation, etc. Notice that rule. And the thing you want to do differently is we are not getting rid of this rule. You spend so much time going, I cannot think like that. I shouldn't be like that. The thing is, we want to be compassionate. So we are not getting rid of it. We're just saying, okay, this is a rule that have come out for whatever reason from the past. Let's focus on the new rule. Let's try something different. See the difference? You're not like spending all your effort trying to press down this rule. You're just calmly focusing on the new rule, a new way of doing. And then, very importantly, it's about regulation, right? Especially it's every few months. You might want to look into, okay, are there ways such as deep breathing or the very physiological kind of strategies where you can really practice getting your body to calm down? In fact, you might even want to practice it daily and not wait till right before that high stakes presentation so that your body is already used to the way you're thinking and breathing and then you got to do it a few times. It's not like one time and it magically gets better. So it takes a few repetitions. Most importantly, just make sure that self-compassion, right? Remove all that I shouldn't be like this, I cannot be like that, right? And show more empathy towards yourself. Thank you for sharing.
Thanks.
Any other questions? I'm okay to stay for a few minutes more if there's people who really want to ask.
Thank you,
Have I cleared everything?
Ron.
I think you're muted. Yeah, still muted, I think. That's weird.
I'm looking through the chat.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
Yeah,
my bad.
oh,
good now. Yeah, yeah.
Sorry.
No.
Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone, for the active participation. And also, glad to hear that this webinar has been very informative and also help you get something out of it. So this is a feedback form that you can leave about today's AMA. And my colleague Manasa has also shared the direct link on the chat. So we would really appreciate it if you could share a few of your thoughts on today's AMA. And if you'd like to connect with Alva on TYHO, you can also book a session with her. So if you scan the QR code here, or also click the direct link that my colleague Manessa has shared, uh, you can see what issues Alva can help with, the full list. Uh, and also, okay. And then the upcoming webinar is about family, work, life integration. If this is something you're keen to learn more about, you can also scan the barcode to sign up early.
thank you, everyone.
Thank you everyone for your time today. If you haven't had lunch, please feel free to go get your lunch. Alva too.
You too, everyone. Please take care of yourself.
Thank you for attending today's webinar. We look forward to seeing you on our next event.
Thank you. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Have a good weekend, everyone.